Imagine, for a moment, a man so audacious, so utterly charming, that he managed to sell one of the world's most iconic landmarks. Not once, but twice. This isn't a fairy tale, nor a movie plot. This is the true story of Victor Lustig, the man who sold the Eiffel Tower. Our story begins in the glittering, post-World War I Paris of the early 1920s. The city was alive, but beneath the surface of glamour, a quiet problem loomed over its most famous structure. The Eiffel Tower, a marvel of engineering built for the 1889 World's Fair, was never meant to be permanent. 30 years on, its iron lattice was showing its age. Rust was a constant battle, and the cost of repainting and maintaining the colossal monument was astronomical. The public, it seemed, had grown accustomed to it, but the city officials were quietly debating its future. Was it an expensive relic or a timeless symbol? This uncertainty, this whisper of doubt, was all a master con artist like Victor Lustig needed. Lustig was a man of many names and even more talents. Born in Bohemia, he spoke 5 languages fluently and possessed an uncanny ability to read people. He was a professional gambler, a counterfeiter, and a master of deception, always impeccably dressed, always exuding an air of sophisticated authority. He had already pulled off countless scams across Europe and America, from money printing machines to fake investment schemes. But the Eiffel Tower, that was a different league entirely. He saw the newspaper articles discussing the tower's exorbitant maintenance costs, and the public's divided opinion. A spark ignited in his cunning mind. What if, he mused, the city decided it was simply too expensive to keep? What if they decided to scrap it? The plan was breathtaking in its simplicity and terrifying in its audacity. Lustig forged official-looking government stationery, complete with fake seals and letterheads. He then sent out invitations to 6 of France's most prominent scrap metal dealers, requesting a highly confidential meeting to discuss a matter of national importance. The letters were carefully worded, hinting at a sensitive government decision that needed to be handled with the utmost discretion. He booked a suite at one of Paris's most exclusive hotels, transforming it into his temporary government office. When the dealers arrived, they were met by Lustig, who introduced himself as Deputy Director General of the Ministry of Posts and Telegraphs. He spoke with an air of weary importance, explaining that the city had made the difficult decision to dismantle the Eiffel Tower. The cost of upkeep was simply too high, and the political fallout of such an announcement needed to be managed carefully. The dealers, eager for such a massive contract, listened intently. Lustig explained that the government wanted to sell the 7,000 tons of wrought iron for scrap, and they were looking for bids. But there was a catch, a subtle twist designed to weed out the cautious and ensnare the greedy. Lustig observed the dealers closely, noting their personalities, their eagerness, their weaknesses. He knew that the biggest score wouldn't come from the highest bid alone. He needed someone desperate, someone who would overlook the red flags in their hunger for profit. He singled out André Poisson, a man new to the Parisian business elite, eager to make a name for himself. Poisson, feeling insecure and desperate to prove his worth, was the perfect mark. Lustig then subtly hinted that, due to the sensitive nature of the deal, a private consideration might help secure the contract. A bribe. This was the true test. Would Poisson be so blinded by ambition and the promise of a massive fortune that he would pay not only for the tower, but also for the privilege of buying it? The trap was set. Poisson, convinced he was on the verge of the deal of a lifetime, handed over a substantial sum of cash. Not just for the scrap metal, but also a hefty bribe to Lustig. With the money in hand, Lustig simply vanished. He boarded a train to Vienna, leaving behind a bewildered scrap dealer, a non-existent government contract, and an Eiffel Tower that stood exactly where it had always been. But what happened to André Poisson? And would Lustig dare to try such an outrageous scam again? Victor Lustig had pulled off the impossible. He had sold the Eiffel Tower, collected a fortune, and disappeared without a trace. André Poisson, the unfortunate scrap dealer, was left with nothing but empty pockets and a crushing sense of humiliation. The shame was so profound, embarrassment so unbearable that Poisson never reported the crime to the police. How could he admit he had been conned into buying a national monument and worse, paid a bribe to do it? His silence was Lustig's greatest asset, a shield that allowed the audacious con man to escape justice and, more importantly, to dream even bigger. Lustig, now comfortably ensconced in Vienna, could have retired a wealthy man. But for a mind like his, the thrill of the game was irresistible. The fact that Poisson hadn't reported him was a revelation. It meant the scam was perfect, almost too perfect. It meant he could do it again. Just a month later, with the same forged documents, the same air of official secrecy, and the same irresistible charm, Lustig returned to Paris. He targeted a new group of scrap metal dealers, once again inviting them to a highly confidential meeting about the impending dismantling of the Eiffel Tower. The script was almost identical, but Lustig, ever the master of improvisation, made subtle adjustments. He refined his performance, making it even more convincing, even more urgent. He knew the blueprint worked, and he was ready to build his fortune once more. This time, he found his mark in another eager, ambitious dealer. The second victim, just like Poisson, fell for the elaborate charade. The promise of an exclusive, highly profitable government contract, coupled with the subtle suggestion of a private consideration, proved too tempting to resist. The dealer, blinded by the prospect of immense wealth, handed over a large sum of money to Lustig. The scene was a mirror image of the first, a testament to Lustig's unwavering confidence in the enduring power of human greed. Lustig once again vanished, leaving behind another bewildered businessman, and an Eiffel Tower that remained stubbornly in place. But this time, the outcome was different. The second victim, perhaps less concerned with his reputation or simply more outraged, did go to the police. The authorities were baffled. How could someone sell the Eiffel Tower? It seemed impossible, a joke. But the evidence, the forged documents, and the testimony of a reputable businessman were undeniable. A warrant was issued for Victor Lustig's arrest. However, Lustig, always one step ahead, had already fled France. He continued his life of crime, moving between Europe and the United States, pulling off countless other scams, including a massive counterfeiting operation that nearly destabilized the American economy. He was eventually caught, not for selling the Eiffel Tower, but for his counterfeiting activities. He was sent to Alcatraz, where he died in 1947. The story of Victor Lustig and the Eiffel Tower is more than just a tale of an audacious con. It's a fascinating look into human psychology. It reveals how easily ambition, secrecy, and the promise of an exclusive deal can blind even shrewd business people to the most obvious red flags. It shows us that sometimes the most unbelievable lies are the easiest to believe, especially when they align with our deepest desires. Lustig didn't just sell a landmark. He sold a dream, a secret opportunity, and in doing so,